common Docker operations that you would be doing when you are working on Docker in your day-to-day life. So this is the first command that we can try out when we are working on Docker. All right. So whenever you want to find out what version of Docker that you're working on, you can simply pass this command Docker version, and then you can basically get the version that you're getting on. Let me quickly change the color of the terminal because I feel that this color is a little dull. So that it becomes better for us to see. Just give me 1 second. All right, much better. So when we pass this command Docker version, you get the Docker version, the current Docker version that installed on your system along with the build name. And this is exactly what this command does. All right. The second command that you can go ahead and try is Docker pull. So we saw the container lifecycle. The first thing that you do is pull the image from Docker Hub. All right, so what and the syntax for pulling the image is docker pull and then the image name. So as you can see in the screenshot, we passed the command docker pull ubuntu, and what it did was it downloaded a container from Docker Hub automatically. So what we can do is we can also try that out. So let me just clear the screen. All right. Okay. So we'll type in docker pull and then the image name. So this is the image name and we'll hit enter. All right. So sorry about that. I forgot to use sudo. All right. So sudo docker pull ubuntu, hit enter, and this would download the latest Ubuntu image on your system. Now remember guys, we have just downloaded the image. We have not run the container yet, right? So our next command would be docker images. So now if you want to check what image did you download and is it existing on your system to verify, all you have to do is type in docker space images. So about that. So sudo docker images, and then you would be able to see the image that you just downloaded. Okay, so this is the image that we just downloaded, and you can see the size. It's 86.2 MB. 86.2, that's too low to be an operating system, right? Imagine the beauty, guys. So an Ubuntu operating system, a VM that you're working on is, I think, around 1.5 or 2 GB. But when we talk about this container, it's hardly 86.2 MB. Awesome, right? So once you have seen the images, the next step would be to run this image, right? Now to run this image, the command is called docker run and along with the image name, right? So you use some flags as well when you're using docker run. So let me explain you while I'm executing this command. So sudo docker run, this is the syntax. The next flag that you add is -it, which basically means make the terminal interactive. -d, which means run the container as a daemon, run the container in the background. So whenever I run the container, make it running in the background till basically I stop the container. So that is what -d does, right? So the command would be sudo docker -it. It means make the container interactive in the terminal so that I can also pass in commands. -d, which basically means make the container a daemon that it should be running in the background even though I'm not working on it. And then you pass in the image name. So the image name is Ubuntu, and then you hit enter. So can you see you just got an ID of the container? So basically this, if you get something like this, this means that your container has just started. And then to view all the running containers, all you have to do is pass the command docker ps, and that would list down all the containers which are currently running in your system. So let us do that as well. So let me just clear the screen. So just pass in sudo docker ps, and this would basically show you the container which you have just started. So as you can see, I started the Ubuntu container 29 seconds ago, and this is the container ID for that particular container. All right, so my container is running. So what's next? next step would be to see Docker PS would basically show you the containers which are in the running state. But what if you want to see all the containers which are there in your system? For example, what I can do is I can do a sudo docker stop, and I can stop this container. Right, so this container is now stopped, and what I can do is I can run one more container, which would be sudo docker run -it-d and then Ubuntu. Sorry about that. So if I do a docker ps, I would only be able to see the container which is currently running. So you can see it is up 7 seconds ago. But if I want to see all the containers which are there on my system that could either be in the start state or the stop state, all I have to do is type in the command sudo docker ps and then -a. And with this I can see the containers which are running. So this is container which is running, which was made around 27 seconds ago, and this is the container which has exited, which we manually stopped, and we can see that also by passing the command sudo docker ps -a. Okay, now the next step would be to work with the container. So we have started the containers, but the next step would be to start working on them. And how can we do that? We can basically do that using the command docker exec. So what we'll do, we'll just first get the container ID. So that container ID is docker ps. All right, so this is the container ID. This is where this is the container which is currently running. Now if I want to get inside this container, the command for that would be docker sudo docker exec, so exec, then -it, make it interactive, give the container ID, and then bash. Bash would be that I want to run this container in the current terminal space that I'm working in, and the current terminal space is bash, and I'll hit enter. So let me just clear the screen. So can you see that you are now inside the container, right? So this is the container ID, and this is the user of the container. So we are basically acting as root of the container ID. That is, we are inside the container and we are acting as root. So this is basically the environment. This is the environment that I was talking about that the developer will start working in, right? And this is basically an Ubuntu container. So all the Ubuntu commands are gonna work inside this particular container. So once we are inside the container, we can do whatever like. So for example, if I have to update the container, I can do an apt-get update, and it will start updating the container as if it's a new operating system which is running on the system, right? And also to show you guys that this is different, or this is completely independent from what we were doing outside the container. You remember we have Docker installed on our host operating system. Now if I try to access Docker from here, I will not be able to do that. So if I do a sudo docker ps, you can see that it says okay, let me do a command docker ps. You can see that it says docker command not found, right? So basically Docker is not installed inside of the container, and that is the reason it is not able to access Docker. Also, an interesting thing that you can see over here is that I passed the command sudo docker ps, and it says sudo command not found. So the sudo library is not installed in the container, right? So I told you the bare minimum libraries which are required for a container to make it behave as a particular operating system is only present in the operating system, is only present in the container and nothing else. And that is why you can see even sudo as a command is not present inside the container. All right, so if you are inside the container and you want to exit the container, all you have to do is type in the command exit, and this will make you come out to your host operating system. But mind you guys, your container is still running. So if you do a docker ps, you can still see the container running in your docker ps space. Alright, so this is how you can get inside a container. All you have to do is docker exec -it and then the container ID space the terminal that you're working in, which in my case was bash. Alright, okay. Now again, so this I already showed you that if you want to stop a container, all you have to do is sudo docker stop, and then the container ID, hit enter, and the container will be stopped. And then if you do a docker ps, you will not be able to see any containers which will be running inside the system. So as you can see, once we did a stop, there are no containers running over there in a docker ps space now. Okay. You can also kill a container in case a container becomes non-responsive and you're stopping the container but it's not able to exit. What you can do is you can kill a container. It's similar to that of stop, but when you stop a container, it basically gracefully exits the container. It's just like shutting down your computer or just switching off the power switch from behind the computer's power outlet, right? So if you have the stopped the container, but the container is still not stopping because of some program which is running in loop inside the container or something like that, you can immediately kill the container using the command docker kill and then the container ID. Then you have something called as docker rm. So basically, I told you guys that if you do a docker ps -a, you can still see the containers which were stopped, which were in the stop state, right? But as we saw in the lifecycle, there's a third stage of Docker containers, which is basically the delete stage. And to reach the delete stage, you pass in the command docker rm and then the container ID. And this would basically delete the container from your system. Now let's see how we can do that. For example, if I want to remove both these containers from the system, all I have to do is take the container ID, pass in the command sudo docker rm, and then pass the container ID, hit enter, and this would remove the container from my system. So similarly, if I want to remove the second container as well, I'll just have to pass in the command sudo docker rm, the container ID, hit enter, and the containers will be removed. And now if I pass in the command, let me just quickly clear the screen. Now if I pass in the command sudo docker ps -a, you can see there are no containers which now exist because we have just removed them from our system using the command docker rm. All right. Moving forward, now what to do when you have to remove an image? Now you guys know we already have an image in our Docker system, which is this. We have the Ubuntu image. Now if you want to remove this image from the system, the command for that is docker rmi and then the image ID. And this would remove the image from your system. So if I want to remove this, all I have to do is type in sudo docker rm. So rm was to remove the container. If you want to remove the image, just type in I as well in front of the rm command, and then the image ID, which is this. Pass in this, hit enter, and this would delete the image from your system. So if you do a sudo docker images now, you can see that the image is not present in the system anymore. So this is how you can remove image from your system.